Gemara. This is the Gemara for Shabbos, and we're up to the second page of Sanhedrin Daf Yud Ches. We're now going to talk about Kohen Gadol. Taisus already wonders why are we discussing a Kohen Gadol here in Middle Sanhedrin. He says because we learned a number of dinim where Kohen Gadol is involved, so therefore we moved on to Kohen Gadol for a short time, and then we'll go back to the laws of Dayanim. So, a Kohen Gadol, done, he can be a judge, the Danin Oisai, and he can be judged for any crime that he does. Why would you think otherwise? We'll see in a minute. Me'id, he can be considered a witness. Ume'idin Oisai, we could testify against him. Choy Leitz, if he, let's say, his doesn't want to marry his brother's wife, his brother died without any children, he can give chalitza to his brother's wife. And if he dies, you give chalitza to his wife. In other words, his brother doesn't want to marry his wife, gives chalitza. Or alternatively, if they want, they can marry his wife if he dies childless. But who ain't he cannot marry his brother's wife because there's an avera involved. Because a Kohen Gadol has an avera to marry a widow, in contrast to all other Kohanim, and also there's a mitzvah say he should only marry a psula. So he cannot marry his brother's wife if his brother passes away childless because she's a widow. And even if she's still a psula, let's say it continues, sorry for that interruption, and the Mishnah continues. Mace loy mace. If, let's say, a member of his family passed away, a Kohen Hedya can only go to 7 levayas, 7 immediate relatives. A Kohen Gadol cannot go to any of them. In fact, the pasuk says, he shouldn't leave the Beis Hamikdash and to follow, for example, the coffin. Einu yoytze achar hamita. He's not allowed to immediately follow the coffin. Ella hey nichsen. So the mayor says technically he could. We're just worried that he might end up touching the coffin and become tummy. So therefore he has to keep a distance. Hey nichsen, when they go around the corner, then he walks down the street, he can reveal himself. Hey nigla, when they reveal themselves on the street, he sort of conceals himself. The Yoitze Iman, he goes with them at Pesach Sharair until the entrance of the city. He travels after the coffin. Divrei Rameir. What does he do? The pasuk min hamikdash lo yetze, he shouldn't go out of the base of mikdash. Basically means he should not lose his kedusha. He shouldn't touch the coffin, so we make extra gzeres. But technically, he can go after the coffin, no problem whatsoever. And by keeping the distance, it's a reminder. And most Rishonim hold it's merely a derabbanon. And Rabbi Yehuda says, "Einu yotzim and hamikdash." He shouldn't leave the base of mikdash at all. It says, it sounds like he takes it literally. Kohen Gadol, when he is an Oinen, he's not permitted to leave the base of mikdash. He has to continue with his work. And that in itself is a machlekes Rishonim for Rabbi Yehuda saying, "Mahatorah." He cannot follow a coffin, or is it only midrabanan? And the pasuk when it says it means continue doing his work at the base of mikdash. There's no iser mahatorah to follow the coffin. It's only midrabanan. But we don't, even if from a distance is not good enough. We don't want you to follow the coffin. Then he says, when he consoles other people, there's an oval there, a mourner. It used to be, we'll see the Gemara later, it used to be that today we have that after a levaya, there are 2 rows, and the oval walks between the 2 rows. But in those days, the oval was one who was standing in one place, and everybody filed by. So when the Kohen Gadol is the one who's consoling other people, so everybody passes the oval one after another succession. He doesn't follow the regular rank and file. He's separate, and he has an appointee who separates him from the rest of the people, those who are coming to console the mourner. He's on the receiving end. He is the oval. Then what do everybody wish him? We should be atonement on your behalf, and he responds, "Tis should be blessed from heaven." There's the first meal that an oval does. Actually, some of the Shem hold all the meals of the first day, but we just do the first meal that an oval does shouldn't be from his own food. As soon as have raw, other people bring food like bagels and all that, eggs, hard-boiled egg. Call her on in the case of the Kohen Gadol, because of his position and his office, everybody else is sitting on the ground. But who makes a safsal? He, because of his dignity, sits on a chair, on a stool. That's the Kohen Gadol. A melech is different. A melech, a king, loy don, he should not be a judge, nor will loy don in oisa. We'll soon see the Gemara why not. Nor can you judge a king. Loy meid, the loy meid in oisa. He cannot be a witness, nor can others testify against him. Again, the Gemara explained. Beneath his dignity to do chalitza when the woman spits on the ground, this person refused to marry, and nor when he passes away to give chalitza to his wife. He does not marry anyone, his brother's wife, nor nor his own wife can get remarried to somebody else. It's not dignified for the king that just passed away. But if the king is moichel on his covenant, and he wants to give chalitza, or he wants to miyabim, good on him. They said, no, ain't shaymin lay. It's not up to the king to moichel's covenant. We don't commit it. The ain't noisin almanos, nor do we marry the widow of a king or the divorced wife of a king. Rabbi Yehuda says, noise hamelech, a king may marry at least in the following case, almanusa shemelech, the widow of a king. It's not a step down for this king to marry the widow of a previous king. And where do we know that? What's the priesthood? She came with David. Shenosa almanusa shel, he married the widows of Shaul. Shenemer, how do I know that? Because the pasuk says, the etlecha, Shmuel says to David, I will give you as base adonecha, the family of your master, the Eis Nashei Adonecha, and the wives of your master, B'cheikecha, in your bosom. So that's what Yehuda holds. The Chacham argue. They say they're just talking about the family means the daughters of Shaul. As we know that David HaMelech ended up marrying Michal, as we'll learn in the Gemara later. Says the Gemara, Kohen Gadol don. You tell me a Kohen Gadol can judge other Shitta. Why not? On the contrary, because it's such a high position, he cannot be a judge. We learned before the criteria for judge is so prestigious. So we answered, Donyan Oisai Itzcha. The Chiddush here is that we can actually put him in a court and we can have a plaintiff against him. So why not? In fact, if we would not be able to judge him, then nor can he judge others. And we're assuming that he can judge others. So of course he can be judged as well. And how do we know that one relies on the other? It says, he's kaishishu, interrogate others, but kaishu interrogate you. If you can interrogate yourself, if we clean yourself out, first make sure that you're doing the right thing. And once you know that you're doing the right thing, then you can go ahead and you judge others. Otherwise, you have no right to judge others. Okay, so it's kaishishu. First you judge yourself, you clean yourself, interrogate yourself, and then you judge others. So obviously, if a Kohen Gadol can be a dayan, it must be that he can be judged as well. So you're right, there's no chiddush. But I did the kabbalah Mr. Melech. Because we say by king, you cannot judge him, nor can you judge others. A Kohen Gadol done v'donin. By Kohen Gadol, we say the contrast is that he could, even though there's no real chiddush in a Kohen Gadol. Or you say mehakam, there's a chiddush. Kohen Gadol, we know if you kill someone deliberately, it depends on the witness as a warning or not, certain punishments. But if you did it by accident, you end up in the Arim Miklat, in the cities of refuge. And the din is you remain in the city of refuge as long as the Kohen Gadol is alive. If the Kohen Gadol passes away, then you are set free. And that's what we learned in Marmakas. The mother used to go around and give food to everybody and try to be nice. The mother of the Kohen Gadol. So you will learn. Kohen Gadol shaharagas hanefesh b'meisid. If a Kohen Gadol killed someone deliberately, Nerad will kill the Kohen Gadol. The Shaygik, if he killed someone inadvertently, unintentionally, Goyle, he'll go in exile. The Oiver alasei the haloisese. If he happens to violate a mitzvah's asay or a mitzvah's lois, negative, harehu kehedi l'chol dvarim. Treat like an ordinary person. We don't have to have a bezin of 71, 23. Just 3 judges like anybody else. If he didn't have any lois as a treif, give him. He would have 3 judges. And if he's over asay, same thing. Now, what do you mean over al asay? Where do you have lashes if somebody's over an asay? So either it is, we learned the Gemara that if somebody says, I'm not interested in benching lulav, we beat him until he passes out. And the question there is that a din in Bezdin or not, or anybody who sees that person? From here we see that it's a din in Bezdin. Only a Bezdin can do that. It's actually an argument in the Sivis, the very beginning of Choshen Mishpat. Those who hold that it's not a a din of bezin. So what do you mean? Over, let's say you get a bezin of 3. There is Makas Mardus. There is Malchus Midurabanan for somebody who's over and say, like eating matzah at a Pesach and so on. And Makas Mardus, according to some opinions, is no different than Malchus. Other opinions is only 13 lashes. Other opinions is that there's no end, there's no maximum to how many lashes you get, and for that you need a bezin. Now, the Gemara explained this, Bryce. The maze in there, if you do kill deliberately, he gets killed. Chita, obviously he'll get killed. Says the Gemara, he goes to exile. Why should it be any different, treated different than anyone else? Says the Gemara, we need to talk. I mean, I would have thought, says the pasuk, how long do you remain in exile? That the person who killed someone unintentionally sits in the Arim Mikvah ad Mois HaKohen Gadol till the Kohen Gadol dies. Amos, I would have thought, anyone that can see that one day they'll be set free, released from this Arim Mikvah because the Kohen Gadol will die, legally she should go to exile till that point. But the Kohen Gadol who committed the crime, there's no Kohen Gadol to rely on, so he has no way of ever leaving this city of refuge and later go. Maybe you shouldn't go in the first place. What do I talk about? It now we learn. If somebody killed, if the victim himself is a Kohen Gadol, so then if he goes to city of refuge, he will never be set free. Why? Because which Kohen Gadol is going to set him free? Right? Because when he went to Golus, when he went to exile, there was no Kohen Gadol. He was the Kohen Gadol, but he's now been removed from his position. He's been deposed. So which Kohen Gadol dies that he's going to be set free? And so too, Kohen Gadol Shahar Exnev, if he killed someone else, whose death, which Kohen Gadol is going to set him free? There's no Kohen Gadol. He never leaves. According to Tosfos here, if a Kohen Gadol was set up before the Bezdin issue their sentence, he will be set free with that Kohen Gadol material. We're talking about when no Kohen Gadol was set up. Others hold no, that even if a Kohen Gadol was set up, it's based on other Rashis, since there was no Kohen Gadol at the time of the murder, there's nothing to set him free. So he doesn't go free, even though another Kohen Gadol was appointed afterwards. So anyway, the Gemara continues. I would thought he should go to exile at all. He does. Maybe talk to the Kohen Gadol doesn't go to exile. On Makras and the pasuk Lonus Shama Kol Reitzech, anyone who committed a crime should flee there. Afilu Kohen Gadol Mashra, even if one is a Kohen Gadol. Then he says, it sounds like he has to be Oyver, and I say, but the Loisagi the Over. I mean, every Kohen Gadol has to be Oyver. What do you mean? Like it's saying if he was over on a mitzvah say, or he was over on a mitzvah loisase. He's treated Hareyu Kehed like an ordinary person, 3 judges. Freddie Yamadu L'Cholvar. Pshita, why should be different than anybody else? No. I would have thought, like we learned a few days ago, now we learned in the Mishnah, Ain't Donin Loyas Hashevet, you don't judge a tribe. Loyas Navi Sheker, a false Navi. Loyas Kohen Gadol, Elapi Bezdin Shazim Echad. Now we need a Bezdin of 71, like the Mishnah said in the beginning of Sanhedrin. So I would have thought that every single matter that pertains to a Kohen Gadol, we need a full Sanhedrin of 71. All big things you brought to you, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Vorah of Shel Gadol, anything pertains to a Gadol, to a leader, a Nasi, a Kohen Gadol. I would have interpreted cold Dvarah Shel Gadol, no matter what, regardless of what the situation is. That ordinary matters get heard by a judge by 3 judges, like matters to do with Malchus, commercial and so on. How do you know? Maybe Taki do need 71. So when it says Miksiv, does the pasuk say Divrei Gadol? Does it say the words of a great person? It says Hadav HaGadol, big things, complex things. See, Dav Gadol Mamash, only thing to do with capital punishment. Me'yid u'me'id noisa, he can be a witness, and we testify against him. Me'yid, he can be a witness. Why? But Tanya, we learned if something is below your dignity, we have a covered habrius is deicha by not doing anything. So, for example, but time we learned, it says if you find an object and you conceal, sounds like you're permitted sometimes to conceal as if you never saw the object. Even though it's a mitzvah shavas aveda, sometimes you're permitted to imagine pretend as if you didn't see it. For example, sometimes you can conceal, sometimes you can't. Okay, so how's it work? If he's a koyin and he's in a cemetery and there's an aveda there, he doesn't have to go out to pick up the Aveda because he'll be doing an Avera. Or if he was a kohen and the aved itself was found in a cemetery, so the only way he can be fulfill the mitzvah shows of aved is by going to the cemetery. So we say, you know what? You can pretend as if you didn't see the item. You can be misal. Why? Kobad abriyas is deiche in a way of Shabbat Tais, we're not doing anything. Or for example, or a Zokkain, an older person, and it's not passing, it's not suitable, it's not appropriate for you to pick up something of so little value. Machlekes, whether this when we say a Zokin is dafke is a Tam Chacham, or even not a Tam Chacham, ordinary person beneath his dignity to bend down for, let's say, a very small amount. So he can pretend as if it isn't, but obviously if he does, it's a noble thing. If he has to give up his malacha to help the other guy out, the other guy has to compensate him. But if his work is very costly, more valuable than the item, then don't pick up Shabbat Veda. You end up costing the person. That's not fair. So the question is, the Kohen Gadol, what do you tell me? He has to go and give testimony, but the is below his dignity. Says the Gemara. You're right. Generally speaking, it's below his dignity, but sometimes he can go into court when he's testifying against the king or on behalf of the king, as if to say that the king can be tried in a court. So we already asked, we just learned in the Mishnah, but now a king is not to be judged. You don't testify against the king. So what's the Kohen Gadol doing here? Ella, so you're telling me that the Kohen Gadol can testify only when it's to matters to pertain to a king. The king is never found in court as a defendant or a plaintiff. So the Gemara, about a prince. About a prince. Ben Melech had, but a prince is just an ordinary person. Why should a Kohen Gadol be able to testify? It's not covered habriyas for the Kohen Gadol, even though he's a prince. But a prince is not the same thing as a king. It's an ordinary person. Even though the Gemara Shabbos of Shimon constantly says that Eden Abnei Malachim, therefore we're titled to things. But as far as the dinim of the covet of a Kohen Gadol, a prince is no different than anybody else. So when can a Kohen Gadol go to testify in the court? Elamed, it means Bifnei, the king happens to be there sitting in the Bezdin, in the Sanhedrin, then it's the coveting for the Kohen Gadol to go ahead and testify. And according to Moshe Shem, we're still talking about a prince. Says the Gemara, it says clearly you don't appoint a king amongst the Sanhedrin. Should be called the Kohen Gadol. So we're saying as follows: since the Kohen Gadol is on trial over here, so out of respect for the Kohen Gadol, also the king will come. The Yosef, he will sit there, Mekabli Nelis Adusei, to listen to the testimony, and then Koihu V'Azul. He will stand up and leave the king, and the Kohen Gadol then the Bezdin will sit there and consult and consider the testimony against the Kohen. So when does the Kohen is there found by in the court is when if the king is sitting there on the Sanhedrin. So if the Kohen Gadol gives edus in front of a king, then it's dignified for the Kohen Gadol. The question Traces all trying to ask is, why is the Gemara quoted Braisa that you don't point a Kohen, that you don't put a king in the Sanhedrin, when our Mishnah clearly said that the king is on the Sanhedrin. So Traces actually comes along and says an interesting thing. When our Mishnah says that a king cannot be a judge, it's talking about alone, on his own. So therefore the king is making a decision. But if the king is part of a Sanhedrin, part of a group, maybe a king can sit there on the Sanhedrin. Or the king was just sitting there out of covet, not actually a member part of the Sanhedrin. Setting Maraguf is analyzed. We don't appoint a king to be on the Sanhedrin, nor do we want a king or a Kohen Gadol be Iber Shana to be involved. When it comes to Iber Shana, could have personal biases. What do you mean, vested interests? And the Torah explains. Melo is Sanhedrin, a king in Sanhedrin. You'll see it says Loisana al Riv, Loisana al Rab. It says that we want we don't want the king in the Sanhedrin because it says, you know why you can't have a king in the Sanhedrin? Because it says in the pasuk you shouldn't argue al riv, and there's written with the word riv is written without the letter yud. So we imagine it says leisana al rav, that you shouldn't argue against somebody who's superior to you. Is it possible to mean Lisan Larif? Don't get involved in an argument. We type Lisan Laraf. So if the king gives his opinion first, you can no longer argue with the king. Therefore, we don't want the king to be there involved in the Ibur Shana. And because out of respect, normally we say that the head of the Sanhedrin should be the last one giving opinion. But because of the mitzvah of giving up cover to a king, same Tassim Lecha Melech, He has to give the first opinion, like the Rosh Medabrim, and then nobody can argue, can't have a discussion. That's involved the king. That's how we don't want the king involved. And a Kohen Gadol, so Melech Meshum Aspanya. The problem, just skip the line. So that's why generally a king cannot be involved with Sanhedrin. Loy Melech the Kohen God will be Ibershana. Now, why, when it comes to a leap year, well, it's not talking about trying somebody. So why over there? And there doesn't matter who's first and second. So why over there do we say that a king shouldn't be involved? So we say each one has a vested interest. Why? Melech Meshum Aspanya, king because of Aspanya. So Rashi learns, and many are shining, that the king pays a monthly wage to all of his employees. If you add another month to the year, he has to pay. He pays for he has a yearly sum that he has to pay. We divide it in 12 months. If you add a month to the year, then you divide that same sum into 13. Fantastic. He pays less. He gets another month's worth of work. So he would be happy to have an Iber Shana. The Aruch learns exactly the opposite. The king is given an amount to pay 12 months worth to pay monthly. If there's a 13th month, he still has to pay his employees. It'll come out of his own pockets. On the contrary, he doesn't want a leap year. And Kohen Gadol Shemtzina, the Kohen Gadol is because of cold. If, for example, he'll add another month to the year, then suddenly Tishrei will come out a month later in the middle of the winter, and it'll be freezing cold, and you keep it. Going to make it 5 times, so therefore it's best interest to keep Tishrei as early as possible into the summer. Papa says, that a year goes after its months. That Tishrei, if you add another month, Tishrei gets pushed into Cheshvan. Gets pushed into Cheshvan and becomes cold. Says the Gemara, it's not so. These 3 shepherds of a kind and they were standing there talking. And heard they said, one of them says that, but they were talking about the month of Adar. Adar has to be sort of the tail end of winter. If that the wheat that normally planted early in the season, and lakish, the barley which is normally planted late in the season, they both sprout at the same time, they both blossom at the same time. They didn't know Adar. We know it's Adar because spring is sort of about to come in. But if not, then less day, no, it's not Adar. We need to add another month. The chad, in other words, by adding a month, we're actually aligning always the months to the right seasons. If a cow suffer in the morning, is freezing cold and it's going to die. But it feels like it's going to die. But in the afternoon, but in the afternoon it has to conceal itself or look for shade by the fig tree. And he scratches his skin, his hide, because it's hot. No, it's freezing in the morning, but warm in the afternoon. And it's other spring is coming. But if not, less than other, it's not other. V'chadam again, im kedum tokiv l'chada. If let's say the easterly wind is strong, but yafa bloyach nafik lekibla, but if you blow out of your mouth, it's stronger. It overrides that easterly wind, which means the easterly wind is not strong anymore. They know other than it's other. Spring is coming, winter's over. But less than other. What do we see from here? So we see clearly from here that when we make an ibiyah, we align the months that each month will come out in the right time, which means that Tishrei. Regardless, always comes out, in the beginning. Tishrei doesn't get pushed into Cheshvan. Tishrei generally is found in Tishrei, sort of the end of the summer, which is not so bad. So Gemara says, "But Tizba Rabbanon Arabs Samuch." You think the Rabban relied on these shepherds? The Rabban Lachtush B'nayis, if they have their own calculation. But a book is to you, would just say they just supported what they said. In other words, we're talking about over here. If the reason why they made a leap year is not because of the seasons weren't, didn't align themselves correctly, but rather, as Taser explains, there are other reasons that we learned in Gemara before Daf Yud Aleph why you'd make a leap year. So then we see sometimes it doesn't work out. And the Gemara says, yes, it doesn't necessarily work out that the seasons are always the same. So it comes out that a Kohen Gadol might want to add we might want to make sure we don't add another month, even though the reason is that it should be, because he's scared that Tishrei will come out a little bit later than it should. Saying about it further, it says that you Chaylitz and Chaylitz the Kohen Gadol. He's Chaylit's brother's wife, and so too on the receiving end, if he passes away, it seems unequivocal. It makes no difference. They're just merely engaged relation. It doesn't matter whether they're out of marriage. So I understand. Okay, if she was married and so on, then we don't want him to be able to miyabim as well. Just like chalitza, also they cannot do yibum. I understand why you cannot do yibum. Could have the asay v'loisisa. First of all, she's a widow, and the kohen goes on to marry a widow. Plus, he has to marry a psula. And an asay, the mitzvah say of yibum, cannot push away an asay and a loisisa. My question is, if they're merely engaged, and now she's a widow, true that she's a widow, but she's still a virgin. So all you have is a loisisa, and we have a general rule that a positive mitzvah pushes away, repudiates a loisisa. Is a my why? Yove asay the yitcha loisisa. Let us say come push away loisisa. So we answer, Gzeira bia rishona oto bia shnia. The mitzvah of yibum only is the first bia, and not beyond that. And therefore, we are worried that after the first bia, it'll be a second bia, but the second bia is he's committing an avera, living with a widow, and an asay. There's no longer the mitzvah say of yibum anymore. Tanya, we actually learned in Kodmu Bolu Bia Rishona Kodavas. The kohen went ahead and did one bia. He was kind to her. But they're not allowed to live together more with be a shnia because there's no longer the mitzvah say to push it away. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll continue tomorrow in Mitzvah Hashem.